Vandy Beth Glenn.
It's great to see you all today. My name is Vandy Beth Glenn. Here's a few things to know about me. I'm a Georgian native. I was born in Piedmont Hospital. It's the only time in my life I've been able to afford to live in Buckhead. I was a cesarean section, which proves that when God closes a door, he opens a window. I've always been proud to be a native of this state, and my family's roots go back several generations. My gender reveal party was a little late. I had to throw it for myself. But my parents sure were surprised. Eat your pink cake, Mom and Dad. So yes, I am transgender. We've been in the news a lot lately. Most of what you've heard is wrong. Today I'm going to talk to you about being transgender, about certain experiences that I've had as a transgender woman, and about how you can be a better friend and ally to the trans people in your lives. By now, you've probably all heard a story similar to mine. When I was born, my parents thought I was a boy, and they named me Glenn. For the first few decades of my life, I did my best to go along with that. But I always knew better, always. Some uninformed voices in the media today claim kids don't know they're transgender and that they're groomed by evil adults in their lives. I can promise you that is never the case. That does not happen. It always comes from the inside. Some people are just born trans. 1.5% of the population has red hair. The same number is trans. That has always been true all over the world. It's biological. Well, it's neurological, which makes it biological. Nobody knows exactly why people are trans, but a few things are known for certain. It happens in the womb with changes to a fetus's brain caused by a misfire of certain hormones. It's not genetic. It's possible for one identical twin to be transgender while the other is not. But gender dysphoria is natural and normal and powerful. You can try to fight it, and most of us do, but in the end, it always wins. It always wins. What is it like to be transgender? I like to say it's like tinnitus, a ringing in your ears. Only instead of that ringing, it's a constant voice whispering inside your head, telling you over and over that the way you're living your life is wrong, that you're just pretending to be the gender marked on your birth certificate, that living with that pretense is unsustainable. And that voice gets louder year after year, louder and louder, until eventually it becomes so unbearable that there are only two options left to you. And only one of those options lets you keep living. I reached that crossroads about 20 years ago, and I decided I wanted to keep living. So I went to a therapist, and I got an official diagnosis. Then I went to a pharmacist and got my first prescription. Not everyone needs hormone therapy to ease their dysphoria, but for me, that was definitely part of the process. At the time, I was still presenting to the world as a man, not as a woman. There were a few milestones that I wanted to check off before fully making the switch, and I was taking my time with them. When I began the journey, I was working in IT. The money was good, but the work was not fulfilling. But later that same year, I got an opportunity to become a legislative editor at the Office of Legislative Counsel at the Georgia State Capitol. I was excited. The job appealed to me because the commute would be much better, and the work would be in proofreading and editing, which I've always loved doing. Plus, I'd be going from the private sector to the public sector, which made me think I'd have better job security when I eventually came out. Government jobs are always safe, right? So I took the job. It was one of the best jobs I've ever had. We edited bills drafted by the state legislators. We were part of the machinery of the state government, and as a Georgia native, my heart swelled with pride every time I walked through the doors of the Gold Dome. I continued presenting as a man for my first 2 years working at the Capitol. But by September of 2007, I knew the time had come to be the person at work that I was everywhere else in my life by that time. The tinnitus was screaming at me. My legal name change was in process. The time had come. The first step would be to tell my boss, Sewell Brumby. Real name. I knew it would be risky to come out at work. According to the 2022 edition of the U.S. Trans Survey, the unemployment rate for trans people was 18%, compared to all Americans where it's just 3.6%. The poverty rate for trans people is 34% against a baseline of just 11.5%. Over 11% of trans people reported being fired, lost their jobs, or were laid off because of their gender identity. And this is in 2022. The numbers were much worse in 2007. Over the 2 years I'd worked there, I'd been given no reason to believe Mr. Brumby would be on the good side of those numbers. I'm not sure he even knew how to spell LGBT. But through my supervisor, I told him what was going on. An entire month passed. Then, in October of 2007, he called me down to his office. I closed the door, and I sat down across from his desk. Is it true that you have formed a fixed intention to become a woman? Well, I'd never put it in those terms before. Because no human being has ever put anything in those terms before. But yes, sir, I said. That is the case. Well, I'm afraid that cannot appropriately happen in this workplace. I have to dismiss you. I tried to plead my case, but he wouldn't hear it. He said having to work with a trans person would make my coworkers uncomfortable. He said the legislators who we all worked for would think that I was immoral. I was escorted out of the building. I was fired. And I was heartbroken, because I'd loved that job. But I was also angry. No one should ever lose their job just because they're transgender. But in 2007, that was an all too common way for trans people to lose their jobs. Usually there was nothing they could do about it. I wasn't willing to accept that, at least not without a fight. So I went to Lambda Legal, an LGBT law firm and civil rights advocates. They have an office here in Atlanta. They did a lot of research into the specifics of my case, and finally, they agreed to take me on as a client, and we filed a federal lawsuit. Apparently, words like uncomfortable and immoral are major red flags in a wrongful termination case. You can't fire someone because you're worried about the discriminatory thoughts of other people. So we brought that up when we filed our lawsuit. And when they filed their response to our lawsuit, Mr. Brumby and his attorneys claimed he'd never said anything like that. He said he'd fired me because I was a bad employee. That's where it might have ended. A he said, she said. No way to prove anything. But I was ready for this. That morning in October 2007, it was cold out, so I was wearing a bulky sweater. I was also wearing a microphone. I captured the entire conversation, including those 2 incriminating words. The federal courts move at a glacial pace. It was a long time before my lawsuit was over, 4 years. But eventually, it did end, and we won. I got my job back. I never found out how Mr. Brumby felt about that, because when I returned to the Capitol, he was gone. My story has a happy ending, but many trans people's stories don't. I hope that all of you will always do your best to make life easier for the transgender people in your lives. I'm not asking you to march in the next Trans Pride Parade this October. There are other things you can do to show your support. Add your preferred pronouns to your email signature or your business cards. Reach out to any trans people you might encounter in your workplace or your place of worship or anywhere else people gather. Listen to our stories. Or if you don't seem willing to share our stories with you, think about why that might be the case. If you believe you don't know any transgender people, think again. How often do you meet a redhead? Thank you.